And now it's time for Lefties Losing It. The Democratic nominee for Texas, James Talarico, has a history of controversial statements, including once claiming God is non-binary. Now, the self-described progressive Christian is being mocked for telling a podcast he loves trans children.
Something that you love that's not family or friends.
I love, I'm just saying this because it's on my mind, the trans children who showed up yesterday at the state capitol to advocate for their humanity.
Right, you love trans children. That's not creepy at all. Meanwhile, here's a transgender adult calling for activists to target a US boutique after being rejected for a job. The store pointing out it only hires women to help dress girls and women in their changing rooms.
Hi everyone, it's Emily. I'm here at the Wheaton Mall in Wheaton, Maryland, and despite this store being hiring, they have beautiful dresses. I just went in and asked if I could be hired, and they told me that I couldn't because I'm not a woman, and only a woman can work at that job. So Cinderella in the Wheaton Mall, you're on notice. Sorry.
Again, not creepy at all. Meanwhile, an artist called Cricket has cut up the American flag out of anger at ICE.
This is the first American flag I've ever owned, and I'm about to shred it.
Someone please remove all sharp instruments from that individual. Cricket, though, is now planning to make a cozy quilt with the shredded flag and patches with the names of illegal aliens who've lost their lives in ICE custody, as well as protesters who were killed during anti-ICE action. But nothing with the names of Americans killed by illegal aliens, of course. Now check out this Canadian TikToker's foul-mouthed plea for someone to take out Trump over his operation to disarm the truly evil Iranian regime, while throwing in the old libel, he's a pedophile for good measure.
Can anybody tell me why this world is headed into World War III just to protect a pedophile piece of why? Somebody take him out.
Well, let's hope she's never allowed over the border. Now, Tucker Carlson is by no means a lefty. He's what I would call the new woke right. But his latest take on Trump's military action in Iran is so unhinged, you have to now admit the man has well and truly lost it.
Unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter if they want. And everyone knows that. And that has been, if there's one consistent lesson of history, it means unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter. Everyone can feel that.
That is bonkers, and I am truly lost for words. But speaking of bonkers, check out these useful idiots at a Feminists for Palestine rally in London over the weekend, screeching at Iranian dissidents fighting for women back home, living under real oppression.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
Maybe these feminists should try protesting in Iran and see how long they last there. But let's finish now with a few words from the CEO of United Airlines, Scott Kirby. He joined the Katie Miller podcast, where he claimed his company only hired pilots on merit.
How do you reassure passengers that says who's flying your plane is the one for the job, who is qualified and is merit-based?
So I can't speak to the FAA, but I can speak to United. And by the way, I can speak to the whole airline industry when I say this. We hire based on merit, and we only hire the best.
Sounds good, but that seems very different to what he has said previously during an interview with Axios 5 years ago.
we have committed that 50% of the class of the classes will be women or people of color. Today, only 19% of our pilots at United Airlines are women or people of color. And by the way, from all the data I've seen, that's the highest of any airline in the country. One of the things we do is for every job, when we do an interview, we require women and people of color to be involved in the interview process, bringing people in early in their careers as well, and giving them those opportunities.
Sorry, Scott, the internet has a long memory. Well, joining me now is Sky News contributor Kosha Gada. And let's get back to that top story about the Iranian women's soccer team. We mentioned earlier in the show, Donald Trump had praised the Prime Minister for his role in securing the safety of some of these players. But that praise came after Trump had earlier accused Australia of making a terrible mistake by letting these women go back to Iran and implored Albanese to give them asylum. Kosha, do you think the president helped to change Australia's mind here after this reported 40-minute conversation on the phone between the leaders, or had he just not been made aware of the back channel work that was already in place to help these women?
I think it's a fair assumption to make. I mean, we'll never know the intricacies of the timeline and how much back channeling was happening that President Trump was or wasn't aware of. But I think if the President of the United States goes on social media and publicly names and shames another world leader, Prime Minister Albanese in this case, and chastising him for not doing more or not doing it more quickly, I'd have to imagine that that had some effect in at least turning up the pressure, the heat, even if maybe that was already in process. And he certainly called global attention to it and amplified the issue on the world stage in a way that only he can.
Yeah, true. And, you know, the language from the government had been really cautious about this issue, and they'd even initially denied, one minister had denied that they could give preferential treatment to these soccer players. So it was a real shift. Donald Trump in the US has now been demanding that Senate Republicans ram his voter ID laws through the upper chamber. In a Truth Social post, another one, he went so far as to say he won't sign other bills until this one is passed. Now, it comes as the US Senate is wrestling with reopening the Department of Homeland Security. It's entered its fourth week of shutdown. A White House official had to clarify to Fox News that Trump wasn't referring to the department when he made his comment about not passing bills. Kosha, what is this whole thing all about?
Yeah, so there's two issues over there that sort of get mixed and they're related. But the issue that Trump is maximizing pressure on is passing the so-called SAVE Act that would mandate proof of citizenship in order for confirming that the person trying to vote is actually a U.S. citizen and therefore has the right to vote. It's an 80-20 issue. There aren't many of those in the country. It's very divided right now. Very, very popular. And even though the Republicans hold the House and the Senate and the White House, they've been really, really slow and dragging their feet to bring this to the floor in the Senate. It has passed the House, and now the Senate needs to bring it to the floor. There's all sorts of machinations and horse trading supposedly going on behind the scenes, and it's just another reminder of how a big faction of the Republican Party is not really that supportive of the Trump agenda, the more establishment wing. They're sort of dragged along kicking and screaming. The Department of Homeland Security issue is separate, where they've been mired in controversy a little bit. The Secretary Noem has been removed from her position. There were those bad events that happened in Minneapolis recently, so they're just trying to use that, the Democrats, I think, to make hay of that situation and sort of hold the funding of that department hostage. But that is separate from the SAVE Act and a few other things that President Trump is putting in there. And he is saying that that is existential. It is fundamental to the country's security and democracy and sovereignty. Get it done. Don't show me any other bill until this is passed.
You'd think it would be fairly straightforward. People have to show their ID if they want to vote. It's one of those issues that seems strange to us here in Australia, where we have compulsory voting and people need to be registered and show their ID. But anyway, a video has gone viral of Congressman Brian Mast questioning a State Department official over Biden-era grants for DEI programs around the world. Take a look as she tries and fails to explain what she means by making a map more gay.
What is queering the map?
So I think we were trying to make the maps more gay.
Literally? That's,
well,
how do you
don't
make a
know.
map more gay?
I mean, especially
Or
with
gay
AI,
at all?
you know, since the age of cartography, we've had pretty good maps, but maybe they weren't gay enough. So I know also, I took critical theory in college. I think sometimes people use queer as a verb. I do understand that the maps that we were trying to make gay were, I think, of Czechia and Slovakia. So maybe those countries asked for it. I doubt it, but I don't know.
Kosha, I mean, this is loopy. Can we just go back to how can a map be gay in the first place?
You and me both, Caroline, are scratching our heads, and millions of other people. I thought for a moment when she referenced her credential and whatever degree she had, I forget what it was, but I was thinking maybe it's like English lit, and she's going back to old world English, where gay meant happy, and she's trying to make the maps happy. I don't know. I really was at a loss
she said
of what she
queering.
was referring to there, but. Yes,
that's
and
a
then she, of
generous
course, didn't disappoint and clarified. Yes, it's just an example of the money that was sloshing around for many years, actually even before Biden, but certainly accelerated under Biden. USAID, all these DEI programs all over the world. There's like a gay-friendly Sesame Street episode somewhere in the Middle East, and then Irish dancing that was queer, and now this. And the second story beneath that is not only is this pushing an agenda that nobody wants globally using taxpayer dollars, but also a lot of the NGOs and entities that push that have been enriching themselves in the process with that money. And when you have $37 trillion in debt in a country and then you see this, it really makes people's blood boil.
Understandably. The NYPD has provided an update on these improvised bombs that were hurled outside the New York City mayor's residence, confirming that their belief the two suspects were inspired by ISIS and had planned for an attack deadlier than the Boston Marathon bombing.
Qayyumi said in recorded post-arrest statements that he had watched ISIS propaganda on his phone and that his actions that day were partly inspired by ISIS. Balot made spontaneous statements without being questioned by NYPD officers that were captured on body-worn camera footage. He said, "This isn't a religion that just stands when people talk about the blessed name of the prophet. We take action, as well as, if I didn't do it, someone else will come and do it."
But Kosha, New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani is still trying to link this allegedly Islamist attack to white supremacy.
A protest was held outside Gracie Mansion, where I live with my wife, Rama. Neither of us were home at the time. This was a vile protest rooted in white supremacy entitled "Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City."
Kosha, the mental gymnastics involved here to blame white people after what police say was an ISIS attack is quite remarkable.
It really is. He is twisting himself into a pretzel there, and that won't age well because right now the FBI is widening its probe into these two assailants who are second-generation Americans born and raised in America. Their parents immigrated from Afghanistan and Turkey, and supposedly they had more IEDs built or in the process of being built in their residences. They grew up, by the way, in middle-class to upper-middle-class affluent neighborhoods in Pennsylvania and another jurisdiction, and that's where now the FBI is going. So this story is going to develop more, and that comment of trying to frame it as white supremacy is going to make Mayor Mamdani look pretty foolish. I think, obviously, he doesn't want to admit the religious undertone there or the connective tissue, given, that's obviously his background and what he ran on. If he were smart, which I think he is, I don't think he's dumb, he's actually very savvy politically, he probably would have been better off going with an argument that, oh, look, this is blowback from the Iran war, which is one of many things that, people who are not happy with the war, because it remains very controversial, cite. He would have been better going in that direction rather than trying to brand it as white supremacy and looking like a fool, which is what he does.
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, it's confusing to me how he even makes that link. But look, that's not the only controversy Mamdani is embroiled in at the moment. Despite vowing to make everything free during his election campaign, his office is, surprise, surprise, already trying to do the precise reverse. The mayor is now considering getting rid of all free parking in New York and making it paid as the city grapples with a $5.4 billion budget shortfall. Kosha, let me tell you, as a Sydney-sider who has to pay an exorbitant amount to park in this city, New Yorkers ain't going to like this one bit. Do you think he's going to take a hit in his popularity over this?
Probably a little bit, because a big part of what he did, he promised rainbows and unicorns and free grocery stores and free everything else. And a lot of the younger Gen Z people that voted for him, that was a big part of their calculus. There were many other reasons why people voted for him, but that was a big part of it. So they won't love this. And it is the kind of thing that will hit many people. The other one is taxes. He's increasing property taxes, because that's one of the few things where he has the authority to do that. Everything else has to go through the legislature. So wherever he has the authority, which is actually quite limited as mayor, he is going in the other direction of increasing taxes, increasing prices, and it won't work well. However, he benefits from a structural advantage. New York City today is not what it was in the Giuliani years or even the Bloomberg years. And now, if you're the person who wins the Democrat nomination, you're pretty much on a glide path to winning the mayoral election. And he probably knows that. So he said what he had to say to sound good on the campaign trail. And he's making a calculation that if he goes back on his word on these things, it won't really make a difference in practical terms when the next election rolls around.
Well, people are learning that socialists, not everything is free, and it can't be. Kosher Carter, thank you for your time.